Look, everything in Washington has been a lie. Weapons of mass destruction was a total lie. It was a way of attacking Iraq, which he thought was going to be easy, and it turned out to be the exact opposite of easy.
The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right. Governor Bush.
And he's had the gall to go after
the World
my
Trade
mother.
Center came
He's
down
had
during
the gall
your
to
brother's
go after
reign.
my mother.
Remember that.
Hold on.
Let me finish this.
The World Trade Center came
He's
down
had the
during
gall
your
to go
brother's
after
reign.
my mother.
Remember that.
Hold on.
Let me finish this.
The World Trade Center came
He's
down
had the
during
gall
your
to go
brother's
after
reign.
my mother.
Remember that.
Hold on.
Let me finish this.
Help us understand who Donald Trump is as a man. I need to know that you will make us feel safe and you will make us feel proud.
I think I have a bigger heart than all of them. I think I'm much more competent than all of them. When you talk about George Bush, I mean, say what you want. The World Trade Center came down during his time. If you look
Hold
at
on,
Sandy Hook,
you can't blame George Bush for that.
he was president, okay? Don't blame him or don't blame him, but he was president. The World Trade Center came down during his reign.
Something's wrong. Something's absolutely wrong.
Inside job, plain and simple. All you got to do is connect the dots.
It is time for us all to dig deeper, because this could be an inside job.
I do believe that it defies physics for the World Trade Center Tower 7, Building 7, which collapsed in on itself. It is impossible for a building to fall the way it fell without explosives being involved.
The Building 7 thing, you know, if you look at the way it fell, I mean, it looks like a controlled demolition.
Can you believe what you have been seeing on CNN today, ladies and gentlemen? Can you believe it? Supposedly, a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. This is a CNN reporter with a camera crew. And he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. A reporter from CNN and his little camera crew got in to Osama bin Laden's secret hideout and conducted an interview. If you don't believe me, tune into CNN. They're probably running it right now as I'm speaking. And if you believe it, you are one of the stupidest jerks that ever lived on the face of this earth. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. When in hell are all you people going to wake up?
I think a bomb went off in the lobby
first, then a plane hit the building, but then another plane hit the other building. But when I was coming through the doors on the other side of the Trade Center, something, either they blew the lobby up or something, because it blew the glass out of the doors and knocked us all down.
You're in the building trying to help people, and it's exploding on the inside the building, so I don't think it can get any worse than this.
It wasn't from the jet fuel. No way.
People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings can blow up. This ain't done yet. See the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents. Towers. A huge explosion now. All of us.
My name is Tom Sullivan. I worked for Controlled Demolition Incorporated, CDI, the top-rated explosives demolition firm in the world, owned by the Loiseau family during the years surrounding 9/11. And I worked for them as an explosives loader for 2.5 years. As an explosives loader, my job was to place explosives in the buildings to prepare them for demolition. There are many steps that you need to take. First off is you have to weaken the building. To weaken the building, that means the staircase, all the staircases have to be cut at intervals. The firewalls have to be removed. The elevator shafts have to be cut.
I look down to my right, and the elevators exploded, something out of like a Bruce Willis Die Hard movie. People just come running out of the elevators, on fire, fireballed. I mean, it was like, what is going on here? There's something's up here. I mean, the plane's up there, now there's fire down here.
Then you have to move to the support columns on the particular load floors, and those are cut by torch for two reasons. First, to weaken them, and also to allow for charges to be placed onto the structure, onto the columns themselves. And that essentially reduces their strength by about 20%. And even with all of that work being done to weaken this building, it still remains safely standing, so we can continue to work in it. The story that just a few columns can cause a synchronized global collapse, an implosion, is, well, that's just nonsense. I don't see how this could actually happen in real life. When we load a building, we have to have all the support columns on a given load floor fail at the same time, within milliseconds of one another. And therefore, the entire building comes down in a synchronized implosion. So I think this notion of a one column failure causing an entire building to implode in a synchronized fashion is just nonsense. Looking at the building, it wouldn't be a problem once you gained access to the elevator shafts.
How about an elevator modernization, which we know was going on the 9 months prior to 9/11? Yes, Elevator World, March 2001 documents it. In fact, they were in the middle of this modernization. There are people who noted that the elevators were locked in turn and that there were guards placed at these locked elevators during the modernization. Of course, you would have to have access to security. Securicom was brought in. Who sits on the board of Securicom? Marvin Bush, the younger brother of George Bush.
Then a team of loading experts would have access to all the core columns and beams. The rest could be accomplished at that point by just the right kind of explosives for the job at hand. The choices are many out there. You wouldn't need miles and miles of det cord. You could have used wireless remote detonators, and they've been available for years. You need to only look at an action movie to see them in use, and of course the military has them as well.
You You want to call your mother or something?
Contractors don't use them, on the other hand, because they're just too expensive. Well, you wouldn't have found steel casings to be left in the rubble. They haven't been used for years. What we use now is RDX, copper-jacketed shape charges, and when they're initiated, there's nothing left of those charges. And in the case of thermite, well, thermite self-consuming cutting charges have been around since they first patented in 1984. So there would be nothing left in the debris pile except some residue of molten iron.
Get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails, like you're in a foundry.
These incredibly hot areas were found at the bottoms of the elevator shafts, down 7 basement levels. The molten steel was found 3, 4, and 5 weeks later when the rubble was being removed. He said that molten steel was also found at World Trade Center 7. The highest temperature was in the east corner of the South Tower, where a temperature of 1,377 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded. The molten steel in the basement was more than double that temperature.
With any implosion, you don't hear one massive boom sound. What you do hear is smaller explosions going off. Mr. Sunder of NIST has said that you would, if this had been a controlled demolition, you would have heard a large, massive bomb going off.
The World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents.
What in reality happens with a controlled demolition is you hear a successive, progressive, smaller waves of smaller explosions going off. In the case of thermite cutting charges, you would have heard far less noise, since they are worked by thermal heating, melting of the steel, rather than an explosive cutting as in RDX charges. I knew from day one that this was a controlled event, and why I did that is because simply looking at Building 7, you have a sudden collapse of the building. It's fairly symmetrical as it comes down. There's the classic kink, which means that the center core fails first. And you can see that on the video, and the building falls near free fall. So I really honestly didn't believe this from day one, because this is the way buildings classically come down with a controlled demolition.
This material is not normal thermite. That's the other thing that really needs to be understood. Anybody could make normal thermite. You can get the ingredients, you can mix them together, you can make them. Any kid could basically do it if they knew the recipe. This material is composed of the real key ingredient that I don't think anybody else could really make in a convenient way is the nano aluminum. It's a controlled substance. I could go buy it, but the government limits how much I can buy of it. It's very, very difficult to produce in these sizes and to keep from reacting. It's not something that you just get at the local 5 and dime or you're going to make on your own. It's a very, very difficult to make material. And that's the one thing in there that really tells me specifically that this wasn't some guys working in caves in Afghanistan, or it wasn't somebody in their basement doing this. This was, a massive engineering operation that made these materials. So the military uses it for a number of different applications. Another one, if you do a search on Google for thermite and building demolition, you can find all sorts of wonderful devices that have been fabricated and invented that use thermite for building demolitions.